Today's episode is sponsored by Dancesoft Gamers. Dancesoft Gamers is the leading distributor of video games and other consumer gadgets like the podcast microphone sets, ring lights, headphones, and affordable smartwatches, and many other cool gadgets. For these and more, visit their website at www.dancesoftgamers.co. That is www.dancesoftgamers.co. So how are you doing?
I'm doing well.
Mhm.
I'm in Alabama with a friend and her family, so
Yeah.
it's good to, I don't know, be in like a family setting.
Mhm.
And yeah, that's been really nice
Where in
for
Alabama?
Thanksgiving. Huntsville.
Huntsville. I think I know where that is. So I lived in Alabama for a year. Um, I went to college in
Okay.
Birmingham back in
Okay, cool.
2015. Yeah. So I know most of
Hmm.
the places in Alabama. It was a cool place. I personally didn't like it that much. I didn't really have a lot of friends there, but it
I
was all
can
right.
get that.
It
Yeah, so were
was all
you
right.
here like for 4 years?
No, I was there for 1 year, and then
Okay, okay.
I moved to Michigan. So
Okay, I see.
I finished my school in Michigan. Mujevale, Mujevale, Mujevale. My name is Bane Kibuka, and welcome to another episode of the Ugandan Ball Talk Show. It's nice having you on my podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
It's crazy how the world connects. Like a few days ago, I didn't know about you. I didn't even know you exist. I didn't even know who you are.
Yeah.
You didn't even know who I was. But
Mm-hmm.
having Charmaine on my podcast, and she mentions you, and then I get to know you through that.
Yeah.
So then I got in touch with you. So, and also I listened to your podcast you sent to me, the one you did in
Yeah.
RU. It was pretty cool to get to know about you. At least it gives me a heads up on what to talk about and what
Mm-hmm.
to know about you. To begin with, you're from Uganda. What is your name? I see the name you have on Instagram, but I want to know your name.
Yes. So I am Deborah Laker, and I was born in Kampala. No, Mulago. Mulago
Yeah.
babies. We're from there. My parents are from northern Uganda, Gulu and Kitgum. Yeah, but I was born and raised in Kampala.
Oh,
So
really? Oh, yeah. I was born in. No, I think I was
Mhm.
born in Mango. I don't know. I might be confusing myself right now,
Okay.
but I think I was born in Mango because I saw your name, and like me being living in America, like I would call that Laker, like the
Yeah.
spelling is the same. So I was like, that's interesting. Like I don't know what's what's her like tribal name or like African
Mm,
name. It was confusing, but that
yeah.
makes sense.
So my name actually confuses a lot of people. Like I
Mhm.
feel like most Baganda read it,
Yeah.
you know, Laker. But
Hmm.
if you think of the word Pade,
Hmm.
like the district,
Hmm.
it's the same way. Pade, Lake. So yeah,
Oh
and it
wow,
means the one who reigns. Yeah.
that's good. That's a good name. That's a good name. What schools did you go to, and how was your family background like in Uganda growing up?
So my parents, like their their parents, so my grandparents,
Hmm.
fled the LRA war in northern Uganda and settled in Nakawa when they first moved to Kampala. And so that's where like my parents met. They were like family friends growing up. And then when I was born, I remember we were living in Buya when I was
Hmm.
really young. I went to Christ the King in central, like in town. Yeah,
Yeah.
in town. And so that was my nursery school. And then I remember after that, my mother was working as a teacher and still is
Hmm.
at Heritage International School in Muyenga. And
Hmm.
so after I'd like finished nursery there, I moved to Heritage and I was there with her until like I finished grade 12, so senior six.
Hmm.
And yeah, then I moved to the States. So that's
You went to one school
my
for all your high school.
background. Pretty much, yes.
Is that where you went for primary and where you went for secondary? So just
Yes.
one school
Just one
for
school.
12
Yeah.
years.
Yes.
That's crazy. That's
It was
crazy.
crazy. It was crazy. I think like there are pros and cons to doing
Mm-hmm.
that because I feel like my teachers became more than just my teachers. They're
Mm-hmm.
pretty much second parents to me. And so even when I was back home earlier this year, just having like my graduation ceremony to celebrate finishing now university, I
Mm-hmm.
had like my P3 teacher there to
Wow.
like, just celebrate me. And so, yeah, it's like it's good. It's good in a way, but I think at sometimes they can maybe still see me as that little child, and so it's a
Mm-hmm.
bit strange, but I think there's so much warmth and acceptance in that community.
I gotta say, I've never heard of anyone who went to one school like throughout the whole. You're the first person. I'm sure they're there, but you're the first person like
Yeah.
I've no. I thought I went to less schools because I went to one school for primary from kindergarten to primary
Hmm.
seven, and then I went to the other school
Yeah.
from senior one to senior four, and then I tried a different school in senior five. I went to Chisui Mapera
Hmm.
on Entebbe
And that's
Road,
typically how it is.
but then I didn't like it. And then I went back to my school that I went for all
Okay,
level.
okay.
So I finished my high school at the one school. So pretty much I went to three schools, but I would never heard of somebody who went to one school. That might have been.
Yeah.
I'm glad you share the pros and cons. How was it being in a school where your parents work? Like how did
Mm,
that? How was that
yeah.
like?
So my mother, and I say this like I'm glad she never taught me. Like she was never a teacher who was over me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was good. It had its benefits because I always had someone to run to if I was having a bad day, if kids were disturbing me, if I needed extra money for snacks, like she was
Yeah,
there, I
yeah.
had someone to always run to. But at the same time, like you can't easily mess up because people know your mother and she's
Mm-hmm.
just a few doors down. But I think it really was in a way like a way to protect me.
Yeah.
Um, in that I never had to search too far for someone to advocate for me, someone to just like take care of me. Like she was always there for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that having that stability was good, but then, leaving that and like moving across the world over here was definitely a transition.
Mm-hmm.
Because I didn't have that person that I could always just run
Yeah,
to.
because
So
you've never left your mom at all. Like you've been with her for all your school
yeah,
and she's always been there. Were
exactly.
you in boarding school or were you in day or were you in teachers' quarters or something?
It's a day school.
Okay.
So my like we always lived in a way near the school. So I remember
Mm-hmm.
after like Buya, we moved to Bukasa and then like we were just in the Muyenga area.
Mm-hmm.
So we were always like a 20 to 15-minute walk from school. And I think that was also good,
Yeah.
but it also made my community very small,
Mm-hmm.
where like school affected everything.
Yeah.
Um, and everyone knew me. There's no hiding, there's no being mischievous. Like,
When I host people on the podcast, I want to know, especially when they're from Uganda, I want to know what schools they went to. So I ask everybody
mhm.
that same question just to kind of just to get their school life and because I
Yes.
relate with that a lot because I went to school there and I want to hear about some there are some people who have gone to single sex schools. So I really ask them
Mhm.
about their experiences and all that. And it's
Yeah.
unique because now you're the first person I've had that went to one school for all the 12 years. So I really wanted to know your experiences of that. Did you have any other siblings growing up?
Yes, so I'm the eldest of three girls. So I
Mhm.
have a sister Dorcas who is 18 and the youngest Daniela who is 10 years old.
Oh wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's I don't know. I don't know how it feels to be a older sibling because I'm not the eldest.
Yeah.
We're just two boys. So I've always looked up to my brother. And we got
Hmm.
really along really well. You
Yeah.
finished your high school and how did you come up with this idea that I want to go to the United States?
Oh, so the school that I went to was founded by American missionaries.
Hmm.
And so the curriculum that I followed was an American curriculum. And so I always knew that I wanted to like study in the US, like for my further education. But I had a toss up between it was either going to be the US or the UK.
Mm-hmm.
And it just worked out in being the US. It was quite a journey to get here. I remember not wanting to go to a Christian school because my father's a pastor.
Mm-hmm.
The school that I went to was, a Christian school. And I was just like, I think I've had my time.
Yeah.
I think I've done what is necessary. I think, this bubble has been good, but there's a world to explore. And it wasn't necessarily me wanting to walk away from my faith, but I felt very like suffocated in
Mm-hmm.
that bubble.
Mm-hmm.
And it just so happened that my father mentioned like, hey, why don't you apply to All Roberts University? And I Googled it and saw that it was a Christian university in Oklahoma. And I said, I don't want to go there.
Yeah.
But the next week, I was actually in my mother's classroom, and an American parent walked in and was talking to my mom and then turned to me and said, oh, you're graduating this year. Like, what are your plans? And I, mentioned some schools that I'd applied to, mostly in the East Coast of the US.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, oh, have you thought of All Roberts University? You should apply there. So it's like, you know what, God, I think you're knocking. This is now the second time. Let me be obedient.
Yeah.
Let me not run like Jonah
Yeah.
and let me obey. And so I applied and got in. And there was just so much peace that came with the whole admissions process with them. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like other schools, the interactions with the international advisors felt very transactional, but with them it was very purposeful. Like they, would send prayers that like with your name, like this is what we are proclaiming over you in your time here. And also it just being a very diverse university with the largest international like student body in
Yeah.
Oklahoma made me feel okay, there I will not stand out too much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I see now how you and your roommate Shemaine come, like you had a lot of common things together, because she has all sisters, you have all
Yeah.
sisters. She thought of going to the UK
Mm-hmm.
because all her friends went to the UK, and it was the same story with
Yeah.
you. So it's crazy to see
Mm-hmm.
how these things like connect. But also when you talk about going to Christian school, it reminds me of I came to the US because I wanted to do aviation. I just wanted to fly airplanes.
Mm.
My dad is a pastor
Yeah.
too. If I don't know if you knew about that. My
Okay,
dad,
cool.
my dad is a pastor.
Pastor's kid.
My mom. So I was like, no, I would just want to go fly airplanes. And I was telling my parents that I don't think God called me in ministry. God called you. My brother likes to teach the kids. My mom is a Sunday school teacher. So my brother, mom, and
Mm.
dad. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna be the one kid that goes away and gets a really good job, flies airplanes, and just give you guys money for your ministries so you can just use it.
Mm.
But I'm not gonna be in
Mm-hmm.
ministry. And my dad
Mm-hmm.
goes, if God wants you in ministry, he's gonna get you in ministry. So I was like, well,
Yeah.
I don't know. But it's crazy. When I came to the United States, I was supposed to go to a flying school in Florida, but things fall apart. And I tell this story on
Mm.
the podcast of people in the first episodes. I talk about myself and my journey in the US. But and
Mm.
all of the listeners who have been listening, I think they know about it, which I'm not gonna repeat. But it's crazy because I came to go to the flight school, which it wasn't a Christian school, but things fell apart and I ended up in a Christian school in Alabama. So I was there for a
Mm.
year. And the flight school that I got after that was a Christian flight school. So I went to a Christian flight school.
Mm.
When I finished the
Wow.
Christian flight school, I went back to college to finish my degree, which wasn't aviation, but it was a Christian college that I went to. So I went there for all my 3 years to finish up my degree. So I never wanted it, but God kept me in the journey of being in Christian schools. And that's why I
Yeah.
graduated from. I wanted to step away from it, just like you said. That's why I connected with
Mm-hmm.
you a lot. I understand, and I was just referring back to what you were talking about.
Yeah.
So you get to ORU, and you were there for all 4 years.
Yeah, I was there for all 4 years. I studied journalism, and then also added on a degree with political science. So I finished that in December of last year, and went home for 3 months, which was so necessary. Like
Mm-hmm.
I needed to be back home for some time. And then I came back to the States in March and started working as a journalist in Washington, D.C. So
I
that's been
have
my journey.
I have never been back to Uganda for more than 2 weeks. Like ever since every time I go
Wow.
back to Uganda, the most time I've been there was like 2 weeks. That's the most. So I really would
My
love like a
goodness.
long through 3 months, something like that. But not skipping what
Mm-hmm.
you're talking about. When did you get the desire to wanting to do journalism?
I think that desire for me started like back in secondary school. So I think like around 2014, 2015. I've always loved writing. I've always loved storytelling. I was in a lot of like school plays. But I think that I don't know, it was like a spark. I just suddenly started really enjoying watching BBC focus on Africa
Mm-hmm,
and just loving um journalists who are championing African stories from an African perspective.
mm-hmm,
And so I recall one thing that really stuck out to me at that time in 2015 and 2014 was the war in Syria and how like refugees were fleeing to Europe and being met with resistance and just a lot of the casualties that took place in that. And looking back at it, I think it reminds me of like the journey of my parents from northern Uganda trying to like acclimate and like build their life in Kampala, and a lot of relatives that moved to other places of the world. And it just really made me realize, like, these are stories that need to be told, people who have been displaced and are on a journey of making a new home.
mm-hmm.
And yeah, then I remember I took like a small course in journalism, like my very first like year in high school. And then from there I was like, you know what, I think this is what I want to do. And
Yeah.
I love writing, and it's always been a tool that has brought comfort and clarity to me in my own life. And so sharing that with others is truly a privilege.
It's always nice when somebody gets to do the childhood dream. When you get to do something you've always wanted,
Mm,
it's really nice. It's a good feeling, and
yeah.
I share that with people that I'm one of the lucky people that got to do my dream job. Like I grew up
Mm,
wanting airplanes. I'd never been on a plane.
yeah.
One of my friends texted me the other day, and he was like, "Bro, every time I see you on a plane." Even though I've never been on a plane, it makes me feel like my chances are closer to being on a plane, which
Wow.
at that touched my heart because I'd never been on a plane till I was 21,
Mm-hmm.
till the plane that brought me to the
Yeah.
US. And I was sharing with him
Mm,
that story that every time somebody shares with me that like something can change, and I just was trying to give them hope in their lives that things will change, like
yeah.
no matter how long it will take you, just keep hoping and keep believing. And also the other thing you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned about when you're talking about your journalism, why you wanting to do it, you just sharing stories. And that's the thing I say with the podcast because I love listening to people's stories. Like I love to sit down with you right
Mm-hmm.
now, getting to know you
Yeah.
and getting to know your journey. But I also feel like there's a lot of people out there who want to hear that. And I feel like
Mm,
we don't have a lot of opportunities like that for our stories to get heard, to be heard, and for other people to hear
yes.
other people's stories. Like many people who have podcasts these days, they charge people money. They
Mm,
there's like this is what they don't take everybody to give you an opportunity to share your story there.
mm-hmm.
And so I felt like, you know what, I'll just start my own. And I want to share this.
Mm,
Actually, I've never shared this anywhere. And I was thinking about this like today. and for the listeners too. One time, somebody invited me, and they called me in for a podcast recording. It was here in America. I went out there. We did
Mm-hmm.
a podcast for like over a year, an hour, and I was so excited to do my first podcast. I took pictures, I shared it. I was like, "Oh my god, that's cool!" But I don't know if like my story wasn't cool for them or like what.
Mm-hmm.
They never posted my story. They
Aired
never,
it.
they
Mm.
never shared my story, and that hurt me because I
Mm.
was looking forward to it. I was looking forward to hear my story, and I was so happy that people are gonna hear that story, and somebody might get. Because every time I
Mm.
speak, I feel like somebody is gonna benefit something. So every time I get an opportunity to speak, I want to share what's on my heart to help somebody else who is listening, to encourage them.
Mm-hmm.
So them not sharing my story, and I don't know the reasons. I don't want to blame them for what, but I feel like
Mm-hmm.
if they had lost the information, if they had lost the clip, maybe they would have reached out to me
Mm-hmm.
as like, "Hey, we're sorry, we lost your
Yeah.
your information, so we can't publish a story." That hurt me. I
Mm.
was like, was my story not cool enough for you guys to put in a
Mm.
podcast? And that's the whole reason behind why I wanted to start my own. Like, just have my own. I talk whatever I want, and I
Mm.
can bring other people to talk about their lives
Mm-hmm.
on whatever you want. So that
Yeah.
hurt me, and that was one of the reasons behind why I wanted to start my podcast and why I wanted to share our stories and for people to hear that. So
Mm-hmm.
in the podcast you shared, you came in the US 20. Actually, you also talked about here 2018 in January was winter.
Mm-hmm.
How did you
Yes.
deal with the winter culture shock?
It was absolutely terrible. I remember I remember the first place I landed was Chicago, and it's called the Windy City for a reason. The wind
Hmm.
will enter your heart. That wind will chill you to your bones. And I just remember it just was not fun.
Yeah.
And I think that because like in around December back home, it's like dry season. So it's very like hot, and then to move from that to cold and wet was
Hmm.
definitely a shift. But I'm very grateful that I had a host family. Even just how I met them was just a miraculous thing. But had a family that took me in and basically just taught me the way of life here,
Hmm.
I'd come, yes, with gloves, but like they taught me like, okay, this is how you layer your clothing so you can actually stay warm, and just made that transition for me a lot smoother. And I think without them, my college experience would have been very different.
That's cool. That's cool that you had people to help you. When did I come? No, I came in the
Yeah.
summer. I came in the summer. Plus, I flew in
You're lucky.
California, so California doesn't have even any snow. So I flew in there. But
Exactly.
my first snow actually was in Alabama, which Alabama doesn't get a lot of snow either. It's just like a little bit.
Mm,
But yeah, I experienced it there. And now it came to the part where I had to come to Michigan. Now Michigan was a
yeah.
different story. Michigan is just crazy. They get a lot of snow, so it's cold. So it was just rough for me. But
Yeah.
it's at that point it wasn't too bad because I'd experienced it a little bit. But I always love to
Mm-hmm.
hear other people's stories about the winter life and in or do you guys get a
Yes.
lot of snow in Oklahoma?
No, it's again windy, dry,
Mm-hmm.
and just like cold. And I think, okay, this is funny, but one of the things that I used to enjoy doing from my dorm room, because that wind will like push you over. I'd sit in my like on the days when I don't have class,
Yeah.
I would sit in like by my window with my chai, and I'll just watch people walking to class being harassed by the wind, like papers flying all over the place. It's just, I don't know, it's a bit mean, but it's a way that I would just enjoy myself being like, I'm here, I'm warm,
Mm-hmm.
I'm having my tea, and
Yeah.
everyone out there is suffering. So that's just a picture of like what winters in Oklahoma are like. Yeah.
That's funny because it reminded me. I took a picture the other day. We had a really bad snowstorm in Michigan, and I took a picture in from my house outside through the glass door. I took pictures of snow, and then I was like, "Snow looks so pretty when you're inside a warm house and just looking it through." the window,
Exactly.
but not being in
But
it.
when you're outside,
Mm.
it's terrible.
And I hate it too because I have to drive in it when I'm going to work. I drive like
Mm,
35 minutes on the highway, and there's always accidents during the winter. I
yeah.
hate that, and that's how I got. I was in a crash last year, and I messed
Oh,
up my truck,
sorry.
but I didn't damage anything on my body. It was just my truck, but which was fixed. So, but I'm always mad about that.
Yeah. I'm sorry to hear about that.
Oh, it's all good because it's all fixed up now and life is good. The insurance paid for everything. I didn't have to pay a single coin for anything.
Good.
So when I was listening to your story, there were some of the funny things I really, and I've experienced that too. It was fun of some of the funny things that people say. Like one of the lines I picked out was like, "Did you ride an elephant? And did you guys live in huts?" Tell me about how you dealt
Yeah.
with some of those questions, like with people asking you, "How did you get here?"
Mm, I think I realized like ignorance is really such a big issue. And you can either choose to like be offended by it, or you can choose to laugh it off and make it like a teachable moment. And so yes, I've received a lot of statements like, how did you get here? Do you have elephants that you ride to school back home? Yeah, and just things that it's like, and it made me realize, if anything, the power of media, in the
Mhm.
fact that when people see African countries, they're only seeing safaris, they're only seeing huts, they're seeing, malnourished children with flies on their face. So it's understandable, like that's what they would think my experience is. They don't see the cities, they don't see the lakes, and just like, I don't know, the marketplaces, the abundance of fruits and vegetables. And so it makes me realize like I cannot fault them so much for that, because in the same way, my depiction of the US in a way was somewhat different from like what I experienced as well. And I've had to unlearn some things. So having grace with them, but also sometimes like I will just laugh along with it.
Mhm.
And if you don't understand that I'm being sarcastic, then that's just how it's going to be.
I have the same opinion like you do, and that's how I think about it. Because, like, yeah, there's some things we thought about the U.S. because of the movies we watch, and that's how we thought.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I share with people is like I never thought US had trees because most of the movies we're
Mm,
watching were like the New York cities and like I mean there's some other movies that had so you
yeah.
thought like the US was just like New York City all the time, which I compare
Mm,
those and there are some and this is where I come where I go after that is like there are some things you can say, okay, that's understandable. But then there are some other things that people say, I don't, yeah, I know it's ignorance, but sometimes it's just, why would you like, somebody
yeah.
asked me, um, do you know how a microwave works? I don't know. No, it,
Mm,
yeah, that one's fine. She is how a refrigerator works. Like, is that like rocket science? Like a refrigerator, you need,
yeah.
oh, like you put it in there, like, you have to have a lesson on how like I don't know, like for me, I felt like some of them were just disrespectful. Like the way
Yes.
actually it also matters the way somebody brings it to you, you know. It's a way
Mm-hmm.
of somebody wanting to know, or is it a way of somebody making fun of you of like
That's
because you're
true.
from a third world country.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things I don't know, but like how you approach somebody about those things. Like there's some people who
Mm-hmm.
have used that as like means of just like hiding your feelings or like making fun of you of like how you grew up. But yeah, that's
Mm-hmm.
so I get that part of understanding because we also like there's some things we know about the US that we get wrong. But then at some point there's
Mm-hmm.
some people that use that to just like that's a little
Yeah.
bit too much.
Yeah. I think for me, one of the comments that can be disrespectful is like when people are shocked that I speak English and, I'm articulate, because
Mhm.
it makes me think like, okay, in your mind, you think all and I also don't like the label like Africans because I think
Mhm.
that's so broad. But you think that all people who come from Africa do not are not educated, and I don't know, are very like backward.
Mhm.
Not to say that English means that you are educated and but like from a Western perspective, it's for me in a way demeaning when people are surprised that I speak English because it's like one, if you open any history book, you'll know that the British colonized most of the world. And so of
Mhm.
course, the people who have been colonized will like learn their language. And two, like I'm here at university. Like, do you think I did not study before to like come? It just sometimes the
Yeah,
common sense is
yeah.
not common. But yeah,
I definitely like. I never thought about it that way too. But like, somebody says you're universal. Like, how would you have got there if you can't speak any English? Like, I mean, to the other
exactly.
part, like, there's some. I don't know if that's what. There's some like people, other international kids that come from different countries that can't speak English, which I mean, I've
Mm-hmm.
seen some of them, but like to what you say, like you people will know like African countries were colonized by these other countries that you could the like British.
Mm-hmm.
The disrespect part of it is when people think all people from Africa are pretty dumb because we are from third world country. I
Exactly.
made a whole episode
Exactly.
about that, about
Mm,
working in aviation. And I mean, sometimes I'll share with them stories like, yeah, we didn't have a lot of planes. Like, you're going to just bought the two big airplanes like recently. But that doesn't mean that somebody can't study, somebody can't do that.
exactly.
So it hurt my feelings when first there was a family, and I'm not gonna mention their name. I don't do that. But there was a family that when I first came to the US, I was struggling. I was like really struggling because I came by myself and I had all those
Mm,
visa issues and I wanted to go to school so bad. And this family, I told them I want to be like a pilot. I want to fly airplanes. But they were like, "Oh, you're from Uganda." I don't think people from Uganda do that kind of stuff, or like that's not something you
wow.
would do. And they never believed
Mm,
because of the situation I was in. I was poor, and I'm from a third world
mm,
country. But them non believing hurt my feelings, and I was like, "So you think I can't do it?" I got
yeah,
grades, and for me to come to the United States, they had to check my high school grades to
exactly.
be able to study in the US. So I was hurt by that because they thought that way. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to just work hard and prove them wrong. And when I graduated from my
Mm,
flight school, guess who the first people I sent the invitation card to come to my graduation? It was that
wow.
family.
Mm,
I sent it to them. I was like,
mm,
hey, I want you guys to come to my graduation. But they say they were going to be busy, so they wouldn't make it. Obviously, I knew they weren't going to make
yeah.
it, but I wanted to show them that it's
Mm,
possible. And also
exactly.
working with people too. Like you go through the same school, you get the same certification. When people think that you, because you're African, you can't be in that same field with them and get the same amount of
Mm-hmm.
money, that had my feelings too. Like that helped me a lot.
Mm,
And I share about that in one of the episodes. So those are some of the things that helped me being African and working in the United States or living in the United States when they use your background as something to judge. You are like thinking everything is like what they see on TV, but some of the things are really,
mm-hmm.
really like different. So anyway, yeah,
Certainly.
I'm glad we went there because I didn't plan on going there, but it's good to talk about that because it's something that
Mm-hmm.
was on my heart to share with somebody. How was your life living in Oklahoma? Uh, like I know we just
Yeah.
talked about a little bit of like the US, but you
Yes.
being in Oklahoma, how was that like?
That's a very broad question because there's
Mm-hmm.
so many facets of life in Oklahoma. I think that I'm very grateful. Although initially I didn't want to go to a Christian university, I'm glad I did because I had shared values with my professors and with even the friends that I made. Like there was a foundation that we can on, right? But I think beyond that, obviously you're interacting with people from different backgrounds, from, various denominations, various ethnicities. And I think it was difficult for me to find my place and to find my circle of friends at first. But once I did, I've found like some of the most enriching friendships, friends who have, walked with me through grieving the loss of my father, friends who have, stood by me, like as I'm, trying to finish up classes and like being terribly homesick. And so I'm very grateful for the time that I had there.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, obviously, as we were speaking, you'll, interact with people who are culturally ignorant, but I'm glad that in the midst of all of that, I was able to find like my core circle of people who, like right now, I'm actually visiting one of them. So
Mm-hmm.
it's really great that Oklahoma gave me lifelong friends.
That's good. Yeah, because I know I asked a broad question, but I like the way you answered it. And like it's the same
Mm-hmm.
way, like in the midst of everything that's going, not only in Oklahoma, but like all over the US. And in the midst
Mm-hmm.
of all that, there's some good things that come out there. Because you mentioned just visiting a
Yeah.
friend that you went to college with, and that's one of the things I picked out of college being here. And I'm thankful for because I still have all those
Mm.
friends, and we hang out with them, and it's something that I treasure a lot, like having friends. And when I meet somebody, I really
Yeah.
want to build a friendship because you never know. You mentioned they came in the midst of the time when it was hard time for you to be there to be
Mm-hmm.
supportive. Because yeah, in the midst of everything that happens and everything we talk about, the bad things, it's always some good things. Today's episode is sponsored by Dance of Gamers. Dance of Gamers is the leading distributor of video games and other consumer gadgets like the podcast microphone sets, ring lights, headphones, and affordable smartwatches, and many other cool gadgets. For these and more, visit their website at www.danceofgamers.co. That is www.danceofgamers.co. So yeah, life
Yes.
life in the US, we've covered all that. In your podcast I listened to, you shared about the guy who was asking you was obviously American. So you were kind of giving your
Mm-hmm.
background of like the Ugandan foods. What's your favorite Ugandan food, and have you been able to make Ugandan foods here? I know the other day I saw you
Mm.
making Rolex. I think you
Yes,
copied
I
it
love
from me because
Rolex.
I just made Rolex like a week.
I had not seen you.
Yeah,
Did you
because
post about your Rolex?
I
I don't think
did,
you
but
had.
I
You
did, but
did.
the thing was, I think when I did it, we didn't know each other by the time.
Exactly.
But that was
So
like a
don't give
week.
yourself too much credit. Yeah.
So
But I think it depends. I think like the food that I make for myself now very easily and I've always loved is just like simple beans and posho with skuma wiki on the
mhm,
side. That's like my favorite. But then like this one just takes a bit longer to make, but like in northern Uganda we have this food called la pena and it's a type of bean
mhm.
and we mix it with odi, which is the like peanut butter chipoli and yeah, so that's what
Do you
I
you guys
enjoy
you
making as
guys
well.
make kalo, don't you?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I also really enjoy, although I don't like make like kalo, I make like millet porridge.
Mhm,
So that's really good. And I also have soya from back home.
mhm.
So in the mornings with my bougie. Yes.
I love doing this podcast because you meet people from all over the country, like most especially Ugandans. I love to sit down with Uganda. I still host like other people from different countries, but 90% they're all
Mm-hmm.
from Ugandans because I like to know their stories and I like to hear the stories. But I hosted somebody,
Mm-hmm.
Linda Ateno. I think it's she's Ateno, yeah.
Mm,
She's from the northern Uganda. She lives in the UK and she was talking about
yeah.
like her food. She said in this household, I make sure there is kalo in this house. So like that's why
Mm,
I asked you about kalo because
it's an
she.
important thing. For me, it's the OD. Like
Mhm.
we cannot have millet, but we need to have that OD.
Yeah.
That's to put it on bread, to put it in your porridge, all the
Mhm.
things.
I don't know if it was the guy asking you about the bean. You talked about the bean waivers on that podcast. Was it? And from listening to your school, like, I feel like your school, you guys are the ones who had meat every day. You guys, like in your primary school, because it was like American standard school. For us, we used to
Yeah.
have kaunga and bijanjao with
Mm,
bean weevils.
yes.
And you guys in Kampala, you always have the meat, the rice. Was that like that, or I'm wrong?
No, I think you're correct. Like we had a lot of a lot of meat, a lot of like spaghetti and just all those things. And like while it's good, like at the moment, it's been like 3 years that I've
Mhm.
been vegetarian. And I think for me it was just I was tired. Like
Yeah.
I just feel like I'd reached my capacity of like having meat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Was that
And
is that the America made you get tired of
yeah,
meat?
America,
Yeah,
definitely
because in
in the
Uganda we
US.
would fight to get meat like only on Christmas. Like,
Exactly. 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 I think like the US, it just was an overload and it
hmm
also just affected like my digestive system. And yeah, I also think like the quality of meat is different, or like
hmm
I just wasn't used to the ones here. But yeah,
Yes,
so
I understand the part where you say because it lost meaning for kids like us who just had meat on Christmas. Being in the US where you can just go eat meat any day, anytime, chicken. You can just
yeah,
walk to the store and just say, and they have those already cooked chicken. You can get a whole chicken by
exactly.
yourself, where like you had
Mm-hmm.
one chicken for the whole family. That's funny.
Yes.
Yeah, I
The
see how that's a
rotisserie
bit too
chicken.
much.
I also think that like back home, at least in my family, like meat was either for big gatherings or
hmm
like Sundays,
Yeah.
right? It was not like a everyday thing. So
hmm
definitely was culture shock over here.
Yeah. We used not to have meat on lunchtime. That was not. I don't even remember that we had meat at lunchtime. If we're gonna have meat, it's gonna be dinner when our dad is home, when
Exactly.
everybody's home. So that
Mm-hmm.
was that was crazy.
Yes.
So how is life in DC? I was in DC a few months ago. I think did I tell you about that? I
Mm.
don't know. Because I went there
Yeah,
to
you
get
you texted
I went to the
briefly.
US embassy a while ago because I came over there to get
Mm-hmm.
my Ugandan passport. I wanted to get one of those
Yeah.
new ones. So how is life in
Yes.
DC?
Life in DC is definitely interesting. I'll say spiritual warfare is intense. But I no, I'm not even joking.
I
Like
know.
you think being in the capital city, we're
No,
fighting all
I
kinds of
the reason why
principalities.
the reason why I laughed is like I relate with you because I have friends in DC and I've been in
Mm,
DC a few times. But yeah, I understand. Uh-huh.
yeah, but apart from that, I think it's definitely been a great season of growing in independence, like in living alone, but also in like true dependence on God, where like moving over there, I didn't have an apartment or like a place where I was sure of where I was going to stay. I was staying with my aunt in Maryland and had to search for like my own place where I was going to live in the city so that commuting to work would be easier. And just it's been a journey of truly trusting God and not knowing anyone, like having to, find a church, find friends, navigating the public transportation, just all these different things. And I feel like the person that I am, like now, is someone who's a lot more secure. And I don't know, I feel like I have an inner core that is more grounded
Mhm.
than a couple months ago, where I was very susceptible to just change and I felt very like insecure. But now I'm in a place where, yes, I don't know my 5 year plan and I
Yeah.
don't have a strong hold of like what is yet to come, but I know who holds my future.
That's good. That's a good answer. I'm not the kind of
Mhm.
person who likes to ask people their 5 year plan because I don't even know. Like, I'm the kind of person who lives in the moment. Like, I'm living in the
Exactly.
moment. Like, what's going on right here, and whatever is gonna happen will take care of itself, and that's how I've lived my
Mm-hmm.
life. How long have you been in DC?
I moved in March, so it's been like what, 7, 8 months
Hmm.
ish. Yeah.
Yeah, you guys are lucky. You have a lot of Ugandans there. You have a lot of Africans there. You guys have a lot of like
Mm-hmm.
African restaurants, like the Swahili Grill I was telling you about.
Yes,
When I
yes.
visited, I made sure I go there and had some African food. It was pretty good.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely this is a good place. I didn't really spend a lot of time there because I just came one night and then I drove back the second
Okay.
second night.
Wow.
So I came, did my passport, and then just drove back. But anyway, I'm so happy that I've had you here to just sit down and talk a little bit here and there. We've been all over the
Mm-hmm.
place, but that's the whole thing of my podcast. It's just all over the place.
Yeah.
But I like to ask people a few questions while we close. What has been a life lesson for you so far?
Mm. That's a good question. What has been a life lesson? Um, I was talking to my friend Shakaina, who I'm with, the other night, and I was saying that I I have truly learned that it is okay to be different. It's okay to go
Mhm.
the against the wave of what people expect you to be. And I
Mhm.
think um, it's not only okay, but it's what makes your story valuable to other people. And I think in coming to the States, like my father had wanted me to study law. And while, that's a respectable field, like I knew that it was not something that was meant for me at that time. I knew like my strengths are in storytelling and in writing, not so much debating. Um, and it's okay to value the things that make you unique and to stand strong in that. Um, and even when it comes to like friendships or like as you said, like being in DC in a place that has a lot of Africans, like I found that it's sometimes people will question, how African truly are you, or,
Mhm.
how Black you are, and all these things. But it's okay to like have your unique interests that
Yeah,
other people may not understand, but like bring you joy. Um, yeah, so I think that's something that I've had to ground myself in being unique and knowing that it's not something that makes me weird or strange, but it's rather something that is empowering and that's like God's light shining through me.
that's
Oh.
that's that's a deep answer, and I love listening to those life lessons because the listeners are benefiting something out of it. I do benefit out of it. Like I said, I love listening
Mm-hmm.
to stories, and that's the whole point. I sit down and talk to people. The other question is, what gets you excited about life?
Ooh, I think I get excited about encountering passionate people. And I think that's why I love the field that I'm in that I love, as you're doing, interviewing people and hearing about the things that make them excited and the things that like light their eyes up.
Hmm.
And I think that's truly on the days when I recognize, oh, I'm motivated, it's because I either know I'm going to encounter someone who is going to share with me something that they love, or I'm going to experience something from a new perspective. So, like in DC, going to a lot of art museums and seeing the different things that inspire people's creative process really makes me so excited.
Somebody asked me the other day. Usually, people don't ask me questions when I host them on the podcast because they know I'm the one who's going to be asking questions. But somebody asked me the
Mm-hmm.
same question I usually ask everybody, like, what gets you excited about life? But I mean, for me, is seeing people happy. And just like you just said, like
Mm,
when I see somebody happy, I'm a happy person. I like to be around happy people. And when somebody's
yeah.
happy, I'm happy. Like that's what I want. Like I could laugh and just laugh and laugh. And that's one of my favorite things to do. So the final
Mm,
question, which is kind of my signature question, and I ask this from
okay.
everybody. Who would you like to see on the podcast next as a guest? And you're gonna help
Oh,
me find this person and
find this person.
connect them to me so they can be
Okay.
a guest on my podcast.
Hold on. Let me pull up her page. Because I think actually, no, I actually know who you should talk to.
Okay.
You need to talk to Fiona Lakay. Yes, we have the same last name.
Oh wow.
And Fiona is a medical student back in Uganda. She's also a writer, mental health advocate, and she just has, I got to meet her through Instagram. Like I just started following her page and
Mm-hmm.
she, shares a lot of like mental health tips and she's very vocal about just youth in Uganda and the support that they need in various ways. And yeah, she's just someone who I was able to meet when I was back home this last, like I think we met in January,
Mm-hmm.
and just sitting and talking to her about how COVID-19 like affected her studies, but also how she, was in medical training up north at that time and just the different things that she saw
Mm-hmm.
and the way that she was able to support the community there, but also see the need for mental health services. Yeah, so
Every
she
time
is incredible.
I get an opportunity to sit with somebody who is from Uganda or who is in Uganda that talks about mental health, I get happy. I get excited
Mm,
because even the episode I just released today, this girl was sharing about her story, how mental health, like she had a breakdown and she almost lost her life because she didn't know what to do
mm,
about it. And she was talking about
yeah.
how she didn't know how her mom was gonna handle it. Her mom was just gonna
Mm-hmm,
get sad, and she just didn't want to tell her. So she thought of just
mm-hmm.
getting suicidal thoughts. And growing up
Yeah.
from Uganda, where we nobody talked about mental health when I was growing up. I didn't know it's a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And even when I came to
That's
the US,
real.
when people are talking about their mental health, I still had that belief in me, but no, Banabazungu, because like these white people, like those are white
Yeah.
people issues, like
Mm-hmm.
because that's the background we had. Not until I had to go through it myself, like just being in a tough environment, just being in a place like the
Yeah.
place I told you where I went to work, far away from my friends, far away from everybody, because people don't like you. Every day you go into work, you
Mm-hmm.
just regret your life choices. You just feel sad. You're not happy. I was an angry
Mm-hmm.
person. Like I just told you, what gets me excited is seeing happy people. But I was
Yeah.
surrounded by angry people. I was surrounded by people who
Mm-hmm.
were not hated their lives. They hated what they're doing. For me, I did the job because it was my dream job. But I was working with people
Mm-hmm.
who hated their jobs. They were just doing it to get money, which yeah, everybody does that. But for me, it was more than just job. It was a dream that a young boy had. So that affected me a
Mm-hmm.
lot because even something I loved that I dreamt to do, that I got an opportunity to do it, I don't love it now. And
Mm.
one of the decisions I had made just to quit aviation, I was like, I'm just gonna go get a job in a factory and just do something like just work in
Wow.
somewhere. I'm done with this aviation stuff. Like, at least I got a taste of it. And that was all leads to that. And it was just I was angry. Somebody would say something small and I just yell back at them, which I'm not like that. And when I got to that point, I
Mm.
was like, you know what, I just need to step away. So I shared about that story, and I've had a few people on the podcast to come here and share about that. So when I get an opportunity, every time somebody mentions, "Oh, so this person," I want to hear their perspective, and I don't want to stop sharing about mental health. I want to keep talking about mental health till every child in Uganda knows that this is something real and this is something that you need to talk to somebody about. This is something that you shouldn't just
Mm-hmm.
keep in yourself because it gets worse to where people have suicidal thoughts. Which every
Exactly.
time somebody shares with me a story that they've ever had that, I've never had that in my head, like no matter what I've gone through. But when other people share with me that they've had that cross their minds, I get teary. I'm like, no. nobody should have to go to that extent.
Mhm.
Like nobody should
Yeah.
have to go through that. And like I've had friends who have died, and it hurts me. And so
Mm.
any opportunity I get to share with somebody, talk about mental health and just pull the word out there, whoever will listen to the
Yeah.
podcast, they'll learn something and maybe it will motivate them. So I look forward to talking to
Mhm.
her, and
Yes,
that'll be exciting.
certainly.
So I'll wait for you to
Yeah.
connect them to me, and we can have them on the podcast.
Absolutely. And I wanted to say I commend you for being brave enough to walk away from that job and knowing that it was making you someone who you are not. And I think that takes bravery and it takes self-awareness. So I just wanted to congratulate
Mhm.
you for that. Because it can look like a step back, but
Mhm.
really it's a step forward and it's you,
Mhm.
you know, holding on to your true self and
Yeah.
protecting your heart. So
And
great job.
The funny thing is, you say that because I didn't finish how it ended. But when I left the job and I wanted to just go to the factory, in just 2 weeks, I got a job. I mean, it didn't happen just like the way I'm talking about it now. It's like, oh yeah, I got another
Mm-hmm.
job. I have a whole episode about this, but because whatever happens, I like to share out so people can hear or people can learn or somebody's going through that. But what happened was I got another job that was actually paying me more money than what I was making.
Mm-hmm.
And this job was better than what I was doing because they work on different sorts of airplanes where I work right now. And this place, there's a lot of people who have the same beliefs like I do. It was a health
Mm-hmm.
environment. I'm close to my
Wow.
friends. It's just like I live close to my friends. We can hang out. It's a good town. So it was even better than what I was doing. So sometimes
Yes.
we gotta take that risk or that what's good for you. And like I say, even if it did not end up that way, I was just wanting to be happy. Like even if I wanted to do something
Mm-hmm.
else, my happiness comes first, and that's what I like other people to get out of that. Like your happiness comes first, and just take care of yourself.
Yeah, that's good.
So yeah,
I'm glad it worked out for you.
yeah, thank you very much for being on my podcast. I'm glad we got to know
Yes.
each other, and let's keep the connection and keep yeah, keep connected. And Instagram, I think I have you on Instagram. So you watching any World Cup?
No,
You just
I'm not
harass
even going
you
to
just
lie to
harass me
you.
about supporting the I won't put it as a
I'm not
podcast.
even going to lie to you. I don't know. I enjoy the World Cup when I'm with other people who are
Yeah.
excited about it. You get what I mean? And if
Yeah, I
it's
think
just
you
me, like,
mentioned that. Yeah.
I'm
Today
not going to
I wore
enjoy it as much.
My Mexico jersey because this is the only jersey.
Okay.
No, I have Mexico, I have India. So when I had international friends from school, I
Mm-hmm.
usually ask them when they go back home to bring me like a jersey,
That's
or I buy a
nice.
jersey from their country. So like I give them money and
Mm,
then we go home. So I have Mexico, Costa Rica, and India. So all those are countries where like I have friends, and
yeah, that's
so
beautiful.
things like this, like today, I was like, oh, I have a lot of friends from Mexico, so I'm cheering for Mexico, even though they
Cheer for
lost.
Mexico. Yeah,
But anyway, yeah, thanks very much
absolutely.
for being on my podcast. And
Thank you for having me. It's truly been an honor.
all right, looking forward to letting this one out and for people to hear the discussions we've had today. And yeah,
Hmm. Okay. Thank
all
you
right,
so much and have a great rest of your day.
you too.
Bye-bye.
Enjoy Alabama. Bye.
Hey there, this is Bonnie Kibuka, the host of the Ugandan Boy Talk Show. Thanks for watching and listening to my podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you share it with a friend and recommend somebody to this podcast. Don't forget to leave a feedback on this podcast because that's how we grow. And also don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. Join us on our social media platforms on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. So we'd love to hear from you. Thank you very much and be blessed.